Alright, I got an NPC upgrade build for you guys today, and today we're looking at King's ASTER Crown AC. Now, this is a build quite a few of you have asked about and asked to see, because, well, it's pretty bad. Now, what are the main issues of the build? Well, frankly, I think it'd be easy to tell you what's not wrong with this build, which is, hold on, I'm sure I can think of something. The boosters are pretty good for tetrapods. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. This is King's preset is actually really bad. And there's a lot of changes that need to be made. But the one thing I decided on pretty early is I'm going to stick with the Scudum. I want to make a proper, decent, if not outright good, pulse Scudum build. And I think I've done a pretty decent job of it, to be honest. This build's actually pretty solid, actually, after, you know, a lot of tweaking. Now, it is a build with a couple of glaring weaknesses. You can get out-kited easily. Any sort of pulse weapon just kind of loses, like any pulse guns or the pulse blade, anything like that. Your shield breaks really fast, and you kind of just lose. But other than that, as long as you can get your pulse Scudum fully deployed, is pretty solid, and you can pretty easily kill someone very quickly. Especially, you know, we switched out to the LRB and the LCS. Those two weapons together can make very quick work of an AC. Now, enough talking about it, let's go ahead and get into the details. Getting into the weapons, the first thing I want to talk about is the Pulse Scudum. And you know, I was originally planning to just get rid of this item outright, or this shield outright, because in my opinion, the amount of investment this shield takes is simply not worth the payoff. It's just not very good in my opinion. But in the end, I decided to stick with it and effectively just center this whole build around this shield, right? So just keeping that in mind going forward, that all the changes are centered around catering to this shield. Now, before we move on, there are a couple things to note about this shield that are very important. It has an idle time of 4 seconds. That means you've got to keep it deployed for 4 whole seconds before it's fully active. That's very important. This means no quick boosting. And this includes once it's fully active as well, right? No quick boosting, no assault boosting. Can't fire your left arm unit. Nothing. You can hover and you can move around normally. And that's literally it. Otherwise, you lose that damage mitigation, the big 86 damage mitigation and the 70 impact mitigation. Nothing. That's the only way to keep it. So you just have to keep that in mind, that again, you can hover and you can move around normally. And that's why one of the changes for the left arm unit becomes really important later. But before that, the Viento, the needle gun, replaces his original Sampu here. And it might look at first glance like the Sampu is just as good or even better than the Viento. It's got slightly better impact and it's got better fire rate, right? But it's kind of a little more complicated than that. Other than the fact that the Viento just simply has way better range on this, which is really important for this build, right? With a standard boost speed of only 275, and like I mentioned, no assault boosting, no quick boosting, nothing. That range is even more important than it normally is for the just consistency of these two weapons and comparison of each other. And the other thing to consider is that the Sampu is a burst handgun, it's a burst weapon, therefore sometimes not all the bullets hit. So, the 100 and the 210, I guess, damage per shot can be, a little inaccurate from time to time because one of the bullets just misses. And it's not the biggest problem in the world, but it's worth keeping in mind. And I think it is the main thing that kind of gives the Viento the decisive edge over the Sampu, in my opinion, that just makes the Viento just clearly better, I think. And so, yeah, and I consider actually switching this to just like a linear rifle. Switching like the Harris from his left arm to his right arm. But in the end, I decided this weapon's just too good at, just burst generating stagger, right? Now, moving on, speaking of the linear rifle, we've got the LRB, which replaces it, right? And the main thing here is for the left arm unit, we need a weapon that we literally only use for direct hit damage, right? Because we can't really afford to interrupt the shield except when it's really worth it, right? And this is where the LRB comes in. With a base charge attack power of 2352 before energy specialization, this weapon is an absolute monster. It deals so much damage, and like this is only 700 damage, roughly 700 damage short of the LCA, the triple laser cannon. So this weapon is just absolutely devastating. This is your primary dagger Punisher, right? And, it only has a direct hit adjustment of 145, but that goes for the LCA as well. And yeah, this weapon's just really, really strong. Now, moving on to the right back unit, we've got the LCS replacing the aforementioned LCA. And the main reason here is kind of twofold. One, it's just a way better neutral tool. You can fire this in neutral when, your opponent isn't staggered, and it's not just a complete waste of ammo like it is with the LCA 99% of the time, right? It fires way faster. It's just, literally, it just fires faster. It cools down faster. It's just a way better neutral tool in general. And because it does have the shorter, fire startup, some ACs you can fire the LRB and fire the LCS, and it'll be either a true combo or close enough to a true combo that it almost always connects anyways, right? So this could be a really, really good combination. Of course, it does depend on the enemy AC, their stats, right? Just keep that in mind. But yeah, this is just a fantastic weapon all around. Definitely one of the best in the game. And unfortunately, the LCA is just... it's just not, especially when we just need something for neutral, right? The LCA is a great, directed damage dealer, but unfortunately, that's all it is, really. Now, moving on, of course, I guess we've already talked about the pulse scuttum. That's it. And yeah, that's all there is to say about the weapon loadout, so let's go ahead and move on into the frame. Now, for the frame, I've made a lot of changes here, but the primary focus of the changes is really just kind of bulking up the AC and getting some slightly better offensive stats in certain in the arms, I guess. But let's just get into it, right? Now, first for the head, we got the Mind Beta head, which I switched from the original Kasuar head. And like I just mentioned, the thing here is just got better AP, it's got better defenses, and it's got slightly better attitude stability. Because something I've kind of come to realize with this build is, despite the really big mitigation from the pulse scuttum, can't really rely on it that much. So we need a little bit of tankiness, we need good attitude stability, because sooner or later that shield's going to get broken, right? And it is the way it is. So the Mind Beta just offers us, the best attitude stability of all of the, heads. Makes it easier to maintain the shield, and it's got slightly better defenses, or I guess quite a bit better defenses actually, in exchange for really just a little bit of extra weight that makes absolutely no difference to the build, right? Now, moving on, we've got the Mind Alpha core, switched from its original for Mesa. Much the same reasoning here. As well as just more generator output, so we have better supply efficiency, to make it easier to float as much as we want, right? But way more defenses and more attitude stability. In exchange, we lose a little bit of boost speed, but we're already slow enough that it just doesn't really matter, to be frank. And also, a lot of time you're going to be floating anyways, and you basically have a set float speed, so the boost speed doesn't really matter that much, to be honest. So, just keep that in mind. So, yeah, the Mind Alpha, just way more defenses, way more attitude stability. Just nice upgrade all around. And then finally, we've got the Melander arms, fits to the Melander C3 arms. And of course, the main reason here is just simply to get the extra firearm specialization, right? We want to hit as many shots as possible, right? So the better firearm spec is really, really nice. It also happens to still be a Melander arm, right? And the defenses lost are pretty minor, right? So a pretty good change overall. And of course, kept the barrel legs the same. I was definitely going to switch from the tetrapod, and this lighter tetrapod legs don't really help the build in any significant way. Yeah, I just kept the barrel legs. And yeah, that's all there is to say about the frame. Now let's move on into the internals. Now, for the booster, I ended up not changing it from the Grid Walker. And before I talk about why, I want to talk about the stats that matter for this build, because it's literally only these three stats: thrust, upward thrust, and upward injury thrust consumption. These are really the only stats that matter on this build, right? Because again, we can't quick boost, and assault boost, and we don't have a melee weapon. At least the stats don't matter 90% of the time, and it is the way it is, right? And so again, I had two main considerations for the boosters here. First, of course, just keeping the Grid Walker because it's got good thrust and it's got good upward thrust. And the other consideration was the, where is it? The PO6 SPD, or it's just super high thrust, right? And I was initially considering this because this is significantly more boost speed, right? Extra 18 boost speed is pretty big. But I ended up keeping the Grid Walker for the really high upward thrust, right? Because what I found is even better than the extra base boost speed. It's just flying up. If your shield breaks or overheats or whatever, just fly up. Literally, just fly upwards is I kind of found one of the best ways to deal with it, right? So I ended up keeping the Grid Walker for basically that sole reason. And, you know, if you'd rather have the extra base boost speed, use this instead. I think it probably really is kind of a preference thing, but I just feel like the Grid Walker is better just for that just go up, you know, stuff. Now, moving on, we've got the FCS. It originally has on the Abbott, and I switched this out for the Talbot. This build is very often going to be playing in the close to mid-range border, right? And especially with the LCS, the extra medium range assist is really, really, really nice. And yeah, that's really it. You know, this build is primarily meant to stay at close range, but sometimes it is what it is. Having good medium range assist is going to be really nice in that regard, right? And you know, like the only other thing I really considered was Diablo LT001, but because it's got worse close range assist, which is the more important stat for this build, I ended up just keeping the Talbot instead, right? And finally, for the generator, we've got the VE20C, the 128 energy firearm spec generator. Originally, it has on the VP20D, and it has bad energy firearm spec, so it's out of the window by default, right? It is what it is. So, and this is the best one that we can fit, right? It's the best one with the highest energy firearm spec that we can use. And there you go. It kept assault armor, of course. It's probably the best option to this build if your shield breaks, or they pulse armor or something. When you get a Sagger, assault armor them, and there you go, right? And yeah, that's all there is to say about the build. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and before we get into the gameplay, a quick thank you to our members. As always, any amount of money is greatly appreciated. You do get some perks if you, you know, become a member. You get, you know, obviously you get credited here. You can, there's a members only Discord in the, or members only channel Discord. There's also there's some other stuff. You also get early access, like 1 day minimum early access to videos if you're at the $10 tier or higher. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into the gameplay.
AC on rocks destroyed. AC.
Augmented human C4621. We're not here to take back the real world. However, we will see if you can do it justice. Apologies for the delay, King.
You're late. The imposter already got your truth. We can't take chances.
Right-hand ammunition at 50.
You're strong. Worthy of your name.
AC ASTER crown destroyed.
Thank you, King. We've lost both of them.
One AC left.
2 repair kits remaining.
A raven is a symbol of resolve. The will to choose what one fights for.
Stay focused, Raven.
Right-hand ammunition at 10.
Yes, Raven, I feel it too. This mercenary has potential. Raven, we can still... All right. We'll watch this one. See where they go on a raven's wings.
All enemy ACs destroyed. Mission accomplished.